Hi, thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Eric Draven. Over the next few minutes, I hope what we accomplish is you understanding how we came about our design for our energy water as well as our additional vibrational products. What I'm going to do over the next few minutes is kind of explain to you, going back to 1992, 1993, of how I came to a very important conclusion concerning energy science and combining it with linear science. My wife and I, back in 1992, when I was going through chiropractic school, got pregnant for the very first time, and that pregnancy ended up bad. We lost our child, but it was due to what the doctors said, intracellular dehydration. We didn't know exactly how to deal with it, and the doctors didn't know what to do about it. They were feeding and giving my wife through PICC IV lines anti-cancer medications, which was not good for our baby as well. But ultimately enough, we lost our first child. Going into our second pregnancy, my wife ended up with the exact same symptoms within 6 weeks of the time of conception. And it was interesting because what we noticed the first pregnancy that went bad, and the second pregnancy going bad, was that my wife was losing eyesight. She was losing her stability, her ability to basically stand up. She was losing her hearing, and it ended up with her being in a hospital room, no light, no sound, and 3 PICC IV lines, trying to fortify her with some liquid nutritionals. Ultimately enough, we lost our second child. But as we spoke with the doctor, we had a doctor come in from San Francisco, and he told us, he said, your wife is suffering from intracellular dehydration. Well, with that being the case, I started to research water. And ultimately enough, what I had found is things that came up. We're talking about healing springs worldwide. Karamitsu, Japan, Lourdes, France, artesian wells in Mexico that were offering principal healing benefits, and nobody had an explanation. And for an example, in Lourdes, France, there are tens of thousands, and even now probably 1 million unexplained miracles, health miracles, just from people drinking the water. And these have been identified by the Catholic Church. As I studied and looking at the probability of using water to assist my wife during the second pregnancy, that ultimately ended up in an abortion, in a medical abortion, I came to the realization that we could use water as a courier. Not water as the answer, but water as a courier to be able to quickly introduce signatures into the body that ultimately would stimulate the lymphatic system. And the way I came to that is I came across a professor by the name of Arthur C. Guyton. And Arthur C. Guyton won a Nobel Prize for what he calls the dry cell state. And in his report, he states that by activating the lymphatic system, it pulls the body back into a natural process of getting rid of all the excess toxicity, creating cellular communication, which opens up the cells, which allows hydration in and allows toxicity out of the cell and outside of the body as well. Yeah. And so basically what Dr. Guyton stated is, he said, no matter where you have a vein, artery, or capillary, you have lymphatic. And so in this example, these black circles are red blood cells, okay? And so in this example up top, and the blue here signifies lymphatic system, and these blue lines are lymph tentacles that work their way up into the vein, scrubbing the red blood cells. And this is a half healthy. I'll put a half healthy. This is a half healthy person, and this is a healthy person. Okay.
Wow.
But basically, what the dry cell state states is that when a person is in this situation, the cells float in interstitial fluid, and in this situation of a half-healthy individual, there's blood proteins, there's viruses, mold, yeast, a lot of junk that the red blood cell is floating in. And basically what the finding is saying is that because the cell is floating in a toxic environment, it closes down. It doesn't allow anything in. It closes its cellular membrane. But by stimulating the lymphatic system pulls out all of the toxicity out of the body, okay? And so by the lymph system pulling out all of the toxic fluid or interstitial fluid, it causes the cells to come closer together. And by the cells coming closer together, it creates an electrical charge which stimulates sodium-potassium exchange. And when sodium-potassium exchange takes place in a red blood cell, that's one method of bringing fluid in and excreting fluid out of the red blood cell. And that allows the cell to realize that the environment outside of the cell is in great shape. And so the cell becomes permeable. Now what had happened is I did an experiment, and I flew to Orlando, Florida, and just south of Orlando we had found high magnetite earth. And what I had done in my hypothesis of creating a product that would assist my wife, we found out that we were pregnant for a third time. And within 7 to 8 weeks, my wife nosedived again. Lack of vision, hearing was impaired, her body was weak, she couldn't even stand up. And she went right into the hospital. Again, no sound, no light, and her health condition was struggling. And so what had happened is I went to Florida, and I'm going to draw this out so you can kind of see what I'm talking about, is I went and I dug up Mother Earth, a highly magnetite Mother Earth, and I had a theory about trickle dripping pharmaceutical grade water through high concentrations of biomagnetic Gauss earth to see if the Earth's ambient biomagnetic highly Gaussed influence would influence the water and possibly aid my wife in recovering from now our third pregnancy and the issues that she was having.
Wow. So
basically what we did is I did a 4x8 table by 1 foot tall of earth, okay? And I put glass rods through the earth, okay? And I trickle dripped pharmaceutical grade water through these glass pipettes that I had put right through the center of this earth chunk that I had on sawhorses. And it took about 72 hours to trickle drip about a half a gallon of this pharmaceutical grade water through this pipette system that I had inserted right through the middle of this highly magnetite Gaussed earth slabs that we brought back. And it came out the other end into a smaller glass beaker. Well, I took that beaker and I flew back. And because my wife was in that condition again in the hospital, they wouldn't let anything in. And so what I did is I wore sweats, and I sewed a pocket on the inside of my thigh, and I used a beaker, a thin beaker, and I slipped it into the pouch, and I walked into the hospital. Now, ironically enough, the issue that my wife had is if we tried to spoon feed her even ice chips, she would vomit up stomach bile. Wow. And so at this time she had gone for weeks on end, no food, minus 3 PICC IV lines, trying to fortify her body through liquid, right? Well, what I had noticed when I got in there, and it was a little nerve-wracking because nurses would come in and out, is I spoon-fed my wife this hypothesis water, energy water. And what I had noticed after 5 and 6 spoonfuls, my wife wasn't vomiting up stomach bile. She was keeping it down, and that's the first time, and this is our third pregnancy, same conditions, same issues, same scenario, landing her up in the hospital. So it took a little while, but I gave her about a pint of this energy water, okay, from this setup, and the miraculous thing is that within 72 hours, my wife walked out of the hospital. At that time, I knew that we were onto something. I knew that what we were about to venture into was going to make a major statement, health-wise, to a lot of people. Now, the thing that impressed me and what I was excited about was that my wife was laying lifeless in a bed. She couldn't exercise. There's a few ways to stimulate the lymph system. One is deep breathing. Many of us are shallow breathers, but deep breathing generally will stimulate lymph. Running or even jumping on a mini trampoline, okay, will stimulate lymph. But in my wife's situation, she was laying lifeless in a hospital bed, and 72 hours later, she was coming home. Wow. On her own accord. Okay.
Incredible.
What I want everybody to understand here today is that this has been almost 19 years in the making now. We've had the opportunity to sell well over 1 million bottles of our structured water now worldwide. The neat thing about this is that my wife was one example of now hundreds of thousands of case histories of individuals sharing their results from just drinking this energy water that is stimulating lymphatic movement effectively. I want to thank you for coming. I'll answer additional questions after the preview, and thanks for taking the time tonight.